What's up, guys? Dave Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Spanish Masters of Brutality, Bonecarver. The band's new album, Carnage Funeral, will released on November 11th via Unique Leader Records. Formed of the ashes of Cannibal Grandpa, Spanish Masters of ultra-modern brutality.
Cannibal Grandpa's the best name. I think I laughed the last album review as well on Cannibal Grandpa.
Bonecarver have been at the forefront of the extreme scene in their native Madrid since 2014, combining stories about the infamous serial killers with their own take on brutal death metal. The band received worldwide praise from us for their unique leader debut, Evil, in 2021. Returning with their highly anticipated sophomore album, Carnage Funeral, Bonecarver have spawned a skull-crushing monster. The 9 tracks offer an oozing infernal masterclass in bone-splintering death metal, a true statement of intent from the start, showing this new iteration are serious about establishing their own legacy whilst taking extreme metal to a new level. The album was produced, mixed and mastered by Bonecarver guitarist Alex Tena, and all orchestral arrangements by Ruben K. So, big fans of Evil from 2021. I thought it was an absolute ripper of an album. It sounded like the stuff nightmares are made of. I think both you and I scored it a 4.5, I think.
Yeah, it was like as death metal albums go, it was fucking amazing. So, yeah.
And they're back now with this new album. No real surprise here. Bonecarver, still heavy as fuck. Yeah. So, no surprises. Still very oppressive, very malevolent sounding, but they've always been known for that huge dark streak in their music. And this album sees them incorporate that kind of malicious kind of brutality, and take it in a more expansive kind of direction. Musically, still very a hefty mix of deathcore, brutal death metal, bit of a Blackened streak, and then it's peppered with some kind of hardcore moments as well. But one thing that has seen a kind of huge increase is the symphonic and orchestral elements on the album. And this inclusion just kind of makes Bonecarver sound even bigger than before.
Even bigger and even more evil.
Yes, 100%. The choirs, the strings, the brass sections, it just kind of increases the grandiosity of this album. I'm not going to lie though, on the first few tracks of this album, I stuck it on, I felt I was a little bit deflated. I was like, and the reason for that is I feel like recently there's been this huge wave of symphonic deathcore bands just releasing albums everywhere. And at first, when that first started, I was like, this is cool, this is a little different, I'm enjoying this, where this is going. And now it's just like, it's very oversaturated with that sound, and it's
a trend.
Yes, it's getting to the point where it's becoming really difficult to tell them apart, because a lot of them don't have an individual sound to kind of make them stand out. And when I put this on, my first thought was, no, I think these guys are going to get lost in that kind of sea of symphonic, Blackened deathcore bands. When they've came from an album like Evil that put them on the map, in my opinion, it had like personality all over it. However,
you were only 3 songs into it.
I was only 3 songs in.
It's a 9-song album.
This is true.
Maybe jump the gun a little bit.
Yes, I am now at 5 full listens to the album at this point. That is 54 songs I've now listened to. And although it wasn't like as instant kind of like, wow, this is awesome as Evil, it has grown on me massively since the first listen to the album. I do think the symphonic and orchestral kind of slant on this type of album is something that is very overused at the moment. But I think there's still enough of Bonecarver's identity coming through on this for it to stand out. And
I don't use it in every song, which I think
they
is
don't.
I think that in itself is the thing that maybe allows you to go,
yeah,
I mean,
it does.
because had it been on every song, then you're right. Any personality this band had would be gone.
Yeah, I think a lot of the kind of standout stuff comes in firstly in form of the riffs. I think they managed to keep a very kind of varied and interesting. Give it a really interesting approach. I think each track does come with like a big dose of those Blackened symphonic coated kind of blast riffs and grinding drums. but I love it when they kind of just switch it up into something a bit more stripped of the theatrics and the big backdrops, and just kind of let the riffs do the talking. There's a fucking massive amount of just really hefty moments on this where they just kind of focus on delivering a tight, focused, but rhythmical kind of groove, or a really savage kind of death metal lick. And I mentioned it on one of the reaction videos we did, in terms of the vocals, but actually, like musically, there's a few moments where they are a little bit more kind of reminiscent of Cattle Decap, which I mentioned. And I think track 3, The Reckoning, has that almost kind of like punkier death metal tone, that comes with the more kind of technical Blackened riffs that you'd hear like on a Cattle Decap album, but they don't linger on it too long, so it doesn't feel like they're like mirroring them in any way. The track has a huge kind of deathcore breakdown in the middle before they switch it into a big like string-laden epic towards the end. But like like the kind of deathcore breakdowns is something this album is not short of. They are like scattered.
Who
all
are they
over
on
it.
again? Is it Unique Leader? The label of the breakdown, and some of these are the best ones on the label.
Yeah. Unlike the new Lorna Shore album, though, I didn't feel like this was overload. With that Lorna Shore album, there was a point where I just became desensitized to it. I felt
also,
like
this is 40 minutes long. So
yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
A lot shorter. So
I felt like the breakdowns on like Pillars of Tragedy or the Red Wake still landed with the impact the further you went into the album. They all had a different kind of slant on them, different tempos or rhythms. So I thought they worked really well in breaking up the more kind of relentless parts of each song. I think the album closer is one of my favourites. Bereavement just has these really kind of haunting female vocals, and the orchestral and string sections sound very regal, like almost like a kind of Behemoth or like Septic Flesh-esque kind of sounding. But again, they don't push that for the whole track, that sound. They often kind of strip it back and just get back to basics with the kind of punishing death metal. And I think that's the key on this album. I think it's not to let that kind of symphonic orchestral side become too overpowering, or like it starts to kind of lose its effect. But I do think Bonecarver use a good mix of orchestral, brass, and strings. And actually, I really liked the more kind of stringed parts of the album in particular. I think they really elevated tracks like The Reckoning and Bereavement. The other feature I think they've created more of an identity on with this release, I've briefly mentioned there, was the vocals. I think there's a clear development in the vocal department since the last album. Fernando is now using even more levels of his voice. I think he's always had a really good range, but he's definitely expanded there, where he's utilising more of his higher register, doing that almost kind of Travis Ryan kind of blended scream and melody. But his tone is different enough that it doesn't sound identical to Travis's. I think that addition and the fact he's using slightly more of his upper register gives the album a more kind of varied attack vocally. I think the length is absolutely spot on, like 40 minutes, perfect. Most of the tracks don't venture above 4.5 minutes, so it doesn't feel bloated. Weirdly, when we reacted to the first single, which is the opening track on the album, I enjoyed it. Hearing it on the album, I don't actually think it's as good as some of the other tracks on the album, and it's the longest track.
It's a good opener. Yeah, it's a good opener. I think it introduces you to a lot of the elements that are going to be on the album. It's not the strongest song by
it's a good taster,
yeah.
Production-wise, I think it absolutely fits the brief of, when it comes to deathcore and symphonic deathcore. I actually think the production is more refined here than it is on Evil. Probably more consistent across the album in terms of the mixing and mastering. I really enjoyed it. I think these guys are really good at what they do, and looking forward to whatever's next from Bonecarver. What did you think?
Yeah, this is a, in a lot of respects, this is a band kind of reasserting themselves in a lot of ways. Like, Evil was fucking such a good album, but I honestly felt like we were the only ones talking about it for the longest time, which is upsetting, because like I hear plenty of death metal. We reviewed so much death metal last year, like that wasn't of that caliber, but like everyone was far more excited about it, and it just it kind of felt like, are they being penalised because they're Spanish, and Spain isn't necessarily known for the standouts of the genre, but I thought they were excellent then. I think they're excellent now. I think the symphonic stuff they brought in, the string stuff, the choir elements, are used to probably the fullest amount here without becoming like eye rolly. It's all in there, and it's utilised very well, and it's also used to in the right way. It's not just we want this bit to sound epic. Choirs, like the choir sections are in there because they're adding a kind of darkened melody to a section that already sounds ominous. So it's smartly utilised.
Yeah.
Vocally, this dude is just on fire. Like literally, sounds like he's on fire. So fucking low. Like that range that goes high, and then a little bit of that almost kind of archspire spit, which I kind of love.
Yeah.
I love that tone because it's like we talk about spit and venom. This guy's literally spitting, right? I hear him spitting. It's fucking amazing, and like his vocal rhythms as well, like at times almost impinge on a little bit of a kind of hardcore rhythm while it's doing the death metal stuff, which once again it's another element they're doing that just elevates him above the kind of standard death metal textbook. Like yourself, Carnage Funeral is a good opener. I don't think it's a great track, and even Ancient Atrocity is a good track. The Reckoning for me is where I was like that. Oh, this is the like right now, ladies and gentlemen. Now we've got a fucking album.
Yeah.
So full of personality, so full of fucking like ideas and attitude and emotion and aggression, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And then they just continue to kind of dice it through. Breakdowns, not overused on this album. They're not at the end of every fucking track. So as a result of that, when they do land, these sound heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
Production's great. Yeah, just overall, I think it's a band experimenting, but not moving too far away from their roots. It's a band delivering a great second album, and certainly an album that will put them on the map. So that, like, if that's the mission is to grow a fan base. This album will grow that fan base.
Yeah. Nice. Scores for Bonecarver's Carnage Funeral. Even though initially I was a little bit not sure about this, I'm now, loving the album, really enjoyed it. Each time I hear it, I like it a little bit more. I don't think it's at the moment is as good as Evil for me. I think Evil still has something that just makes me want to go back to it. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Duncan, what are you thinking?
We are one mind tonight on pretty much every review we've done. Yeah, to me, I've had Evil longer in my library. And I'll be honest with you, I do like the more straightforwardness of it. I love the symphonic stuff they're doing here, and I love that it elevates their sound. And it, like I said before, it's gonna attract attention. It's a fucking supremely put together death metal album.
Yeah.
It's maybe just moving slightly away from what my particular brand of death metal is, and that's not a bad thing. They'll get a lot more fans, and they haven't lost me as a fan. I would give it a 4.
Nice. So that's Bonecarver, Carnage Funeral, out on the 11th of November on Unique Leader Records. I'll put some links below to the band, their Facebook, the Bandcamp, so you can check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. And that is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.